So here we are at the end of 2021 and at the end of my 4th year living here in France. And so I thought it'd be interesting to share with you what I've learned over the course of my 4 years here. Now, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell so that each time I post a video about moving abroad, living in France, or finding the confidence and courage to live life on your terms, you will be notified. My name is Patricia Brooks, and in January of 2018, I quit my job and 3 weeks later boarded a plane bound for France to move there. And I've been here ever since. And it has been an amazing experience filled with ups and downs. And in this video, I'm going to share with you year by year what I experienced, what I learned about myself and about life from this huge life change. Now, I kind of want to couch this or frame this as it relates to my formal education in college, my 4 years in undergraduate school, because I think there are some nice parallels. I will say when I moved to France, I did not consider it a form of education. I now do. This has been a real world education. When I went off to college way back in the 1980s, that's what I saw it as, education, an education that would help me to live the American dream. You get that job, that good paying job, so that you can have that nice house and that nice car and the nice family, all of that. Moving to France, it was about me. It was about something I felt I had to do. I came here because I wanted to become fluent in French. I wanted to write my second book. And I kind of wanted to be able to be free to be me. I didn't realize that part in the beginning, but once I got here, I realized, yeah, that's a piece of it too. When I got to France, I did not experience the homesickness that I experienced as a freshman in college. I experienced extreme homesickness. I wanted my mommy. I missed my friends, and I didn't know who I was without the comforts of home. And so for my first semester, I struggled. Every Sunday, I was talking to my mom on the phone. I was writing letters just about every day, receiving letters from her, encouraging me to get out and make friends, that I'll feel happier when I do. But I wasn't having it. I just wanted to be at home. And unfortunately, I was not, an hour car ride or train ride away. I was a 5-hour train ride away, and I didn't have a lot of money to be going back and forth all of the time. So I was stuck, and it was kind of a miserable experience my first year. In France, I didn't have that. I did experience loneliness. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my gosh, you're all alone. Why did you do this thing? Why did you leave your job and everything you've known to move to a country you didn't know anybody? And I had to deal with that. And those nights were lonely nights and scary nights. But I also knew that I did not want to have that ruin my experience in France and cause me to say, no, France isn't for me. And so I used some tools that I learned becoming a certified coach, and that helped. But it was a constant battle, a back and forth. And I talk about, this period in my life in my second book, Live a Bold Life, Your 30-Day Mission to a Fearless Future. And talk about that tug of war. And it didn't feel good, but I knew I didn't want to have that ruin my experience, as my homesickness ruined my first year in college. There was the loneliness, but there was also the isolation and not feeling like I belonged my first year here in France. And that was due to, there was the cultural barriers, the language barrier, just being out of my element. But that was something I had to go through. So that was my first year. And I think I struggled with that loneliness and that isolation for the first 8 or 9 months. So it wasn't a short period of time, but I knew that I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to experience real France, and I didn't want to have that spoiled. So I worked on it. I really worked on it. So that's my first year in college, my first year in France. Moving on to the second year, 2019, I knew that 1 year was not enough for me to become fluent in French or to write my book. I was living my experience, so I couldn't really write that book until the beginning of my second year, which I did. I also, in my second year, started to find my French voice and learned how to stop avoiding. That is one of the things that I have been guilty of doing, is avoiding doing things that are difficult or that are uncomfortable. And I will say that I realized that I was finding my French voice when I decided I was going to buy a car. Now, my second year in France, I moved out of a bigger city to a smaller village of about 8,000 people. And we have bus service here, but the bus schedule hours aren't that convenient. And it's really easier to have a car. So the beginning of my second year here, I told myself, oh, you're going to get a car, you're going to get a car. But it wasn't until 6 months later that I actually got that car. And that was because I was avoiding. I was afraid of what I'd have to do in order to get the car. Or maybe I wouldn't be able to get the car at all. But it was precipitated when a friend, Yolanda, who lives in Niger, Africa, came to visit, and she rented a car. And so we were tooling about the French countryside in a car. And I was seeing France from a different perspective. I wasn't high up in a bus. I was in a car, and it felt so freeing. And I thought to myself, Patricia, you're not going to go back on that bus. Or if you do, it's not going to feel good. And I was right, because soon after, I was on a bus where one of the passengers started yelling at the bus driver to turn on the air conditioner because it was hot. And it was hot, but she didn't need to yell at the bus driver, who in turn yelled back at her as he's driving. And so I thought to myself, Patricia, it is time to figure this thing out. And that's what I did. And I went to a car dealership. The car salesman gave me the name of his insurance agent, and I had a conversation with the insurance agent all in French. He understood me. I understood him. There were some things he needed to figure out how to explain to me a little more simply, but we got to figure it out. And at the end of that conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, all of this studying and all of this practicing, it's paying off. And I was finding my French voice. Very, very rewarding. Now, my second year in college, or the summer between my first and second year of college, I bought a car because I had 2 summer jobs and I needed the car all day long. And my mom was not going to allow me to use her car, and she would be without a car all of the time over the summer. So that caused me to have a car note, which caused me to have to get a second job in college. I had a work-study job on campus, washing dishes or, watching the door or whatever. But that wasn't enough to pay the car note. So I got a job at the Holyoke Mall at a card store. And I worked there maybe 3 days a week. And that helped me to find my academic voice, right? My first year, I spent a lot of time heads down studying, or what I said was studying, and my grades did not show it. In my second year, I had less time to study, I was more focused, and I got better grades. And so that helped me to give me confidence in my ability, and also structure my time. So there is that parallel between my first and second years in college and in France. So my second year is just about over. I've got this new car, and I've planned this trip back to the United States. I had this speaking engagement at the beginning of March, and I was like, oh yeah, I get to speak. I hadn't spoken publicly in a long time, and I was feeling really good about it. But in February, this thing called COVID was rearing its head. And I was watching the news on a daily basis. And I was like, should I go or shouldn't I go? I had this back and forth. What should I do? And I decided to go. And a 3-week trip turned into a 3-month trip because the borders closed. And that also turned into a dark night of the soul. I was lying in bed in a hotel room, crying my eyes out because I thought, oh my gosh, I am going to blow through all of my savings and I'm not going to be able to stay in France. This was a fatal error, deciding to come to the United States when I wasn't sure what was going to happen with what is now the pandemic. And it was rough for me because I found myself raking myself over the coals, something that I hadn't done in a really, really long time. I was blaming myself. I felt guilt. So my third year was mixed with those emotions of, oh, what have I done? But in the end, it worked out. It always seems to work out, even when it seems like there is no way out. It always seems to work out. It worked out in 2 ways. I realized that I really needed to be in the United States during the pandemic the beginning of the pandemic, because I needed to see my friend Vicky Cole, who later got COVID and struggled for months with it and did subsequently die. And I was so glad that I had the opportunity to spend a couple of days with her before she was gone. Had I decided not to come back to the United States, I would not have had that opportunity. So that's one reason that I knew I needed to be in the United States. But the second reason was it gave birth to my idea of what I was going to do to sustain myself long-term in France financially, because my first couple of years in France, I came over on a visitor visa, which did not allow me to work. So my first 2 years here were a sabbatical. I had told myself before I moved here that, in my first year, I'll look for a job, I'll get sponsored, and that's how I'll stay in France. But I realized soon after, when a coworker asked me how my job search was going, I had to tell her I wasn't looking, and that the thought of looking for a job really turned my stomach. And I knew then that I would need to figure out what kind of coaching practice I wanted to have, because I had 2 years earlier become a certified life coach, but had not pursued it. So in my third year was when, I had this dark night of the soul that seemed like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world, but then also gave birth to my coaching niche, which is helping women who want to move abroad confidently and sustainably do so. In my second year, I toyed with the idea of maybe helping corporate women who feel disrespected or unappreciated work through that. But I was removed from the corporate world and really didn't want to deal with that. I was like, done with that. So when I was in the United States, stranded for those 3 months, I was staying with a friend. I left the hotel, was staying with a friend who was considering a big life change herself. She was considering moving from her house, selling her house, and buying an RV and driving across North America in it. So I was there and we had conversations, and she was picking my brain about how I had made my move happen. And I was kind of coaching her through some of the things that she might need to consider. And it felt good. And I thought, Patricia, this is the thing you need to do. You don't need to work with people in corporate, because that is not your thing. Your thing is big life changes like moving abroad. And so that was when I decided that I was going to create the Carefree Expat Incubator Program. And voila. So that dark night of the soul was a blessing in disguise. Now, my third year in college was when I had to take my economics comprehensive exam. 2 of them. One was in macroeconomics and one was in microeconomics. I passed the microeconomics exam, no problem. It was the macroeconomics exam that caused me to have a problem. I failed it. And I found myself sitting in my car one fall day, tears streaming down my face because I thought my college career was over. I thought I would not be able to graduate because I had failed this exam. And it wasn't until later that day or the following day that a classmate who had seen me crying in my car, she approached me and asked me what was going on. And I told her, and she's like, oh, that's not a big deal. You know what? You can just figure out what you did not do well on, and you can study that harder and take the exam again. And it was like this, oh, I could take this exam again. And it had not dawned on me that I could do that. But that kind of gave way to, oh, okay, I'm not dead in the water here. I do still have options, and I'm going to go forward with that. Took the exam again, passed it. A year later, graduated with my economics degree. So those are the parallels there. Third year in was a difficult year, but also a year of revelation and understanding that, you know, where there is a will, there is a way. My third year here, I started research on my program, and that led into my fourth year here, which is a year of, I wouldn't say I'm coasting, but it's a year where there is a lot more flow in my life, a lot more confidence in my life, a lot more belief in myself and in the universe that things will work out. And I can tell that because at nighttime, I don't struggle to go to sleep. I've not ever really struggled to fall asleep here in France. There would be some nights I'd wake up in the middle of the night questioning what I had done, the sanity of what I'd done. But this year, I fall off to sleep and I sleep soundly. I sleep very deeply. I wake up feeling rejuvenated. I know it's a restorative sleep. And that makes me feel like, oh yeah, I have faith in what is ahead of me. Now, that's not because I've got my business all figured out and that, you know, the money is just rolling in. It's because I've done a lot of inner work on my mindset, on understanding that sometimes doing isn't the thing I need to be doing. Sometimes I need to be being. Sometimes I need to be not thinking about how I'm going to make that next sale or what my next move is, but take time out to enjoy life a little bit, relax, unwind, and allow those ideas and things that are going to help me support my business and myself come to me. And that's a hard thing for a type A person to do. I know that's how I characterize myself. I've always been a hard driving person because I've been trained that as a Black woman in America, I've got to be better than everybody else in order to just get along. And so it's taken a little time to unwind that, to reprogram my mind, to have a belief in not only myself and my abilities, but in the universe that is there and is supporting me. And I've done a lot of this work by listening to and watching a lot of videos from a lot of different people who speak of a lot of different things, or in a lot of different ways, similar things. I listened to Esther Hicks. I listened to Dr. Wayne Dyer. This year I found Reverend Ike, which really surprised me. He was way ahead of his time with the law of attraction. I listened to Neville Goddard and Joseph Murphy and Alan Watts, all of these people who think differently. And that has allowed me to shift my perspective about how I believe life works and my role in it and my identity in it as well. So this fourth year really has been about mindset shifting, confidence building, and belief building. And it is really helping things to flow for me. So huge learnings throughout all 4 years. This year feels particularly strong to me because this time last year I was working to get my first clients for the beta of the program that I offer now. And it was hard. And I didn't think I was going to get enough people to participate. And that caused me to go down the path of that mindset work. Now, as for college, my 4th year in college was a coast year of sorts. Not because I had done a lot of inner work or mindset shifting. No, I was still hard driving, but I had front-loaded a lot of my coursework. So I had some electives that I could use. I could take printmaking and I could take sculpture, and I could kind of relax a little bit, take some of the pressure off because a lot of the harder courses were behind me. And so that was good in a way because it allowed me to kind of let go a little bit, not necessarily in the way I approached things or saw things, but in not having to push so hard academically. And I'll tell you, college for me was hard. It was not an easy thing. So that is what I have learned about life and myself living here in France, and kind of a retrospective of what I learned going through 4 years of college all those years ago. Now, I moved to France because I felt compelled to do so. My intuition was telling me, you got to be in a French-speaking country. Didn't know why. I knew that I wanted to write my second book. I knew I wanted to become fluent in French. But beyond that, I didn't see that, oh, you're going to have this coaching practice to help other women move abroad confidently and sustainably. Now, if you have this compulsion, this desire, this strong desire to move to a foreign country, but feel like you have some self-doubt or something that's holding you back, I'd love to have a conversation with you to uncover what that might be, discover your reasons for wanting to make this move abroad, and see if the Carefree Expat Incubator Program is something that could help you move your dream of living abroad forward. Now, I'm going to put a link below to where you can schedule your complimentary session with me. And if you feel called to do so, by all means do it. I am looking forward to talking with you. You know, moving abroad is not something that I think should be done lightly, because it is starting your life over, which is not something I really kind of thought about before I did it. But as I have been starting my life again with administrative matters and with learning a new language and a new culture, it's exactly that. But if you feel like it is something you need to do or should do, then by all means, pursue it. I'm curious, what did you find the most surprising about what I shared with you today? Let me know in the comments. Now, if you're curious why I quit my job and moved to France at the age of 51, you can watch this video here. And be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you again next time. Bye for now.